Personally, I think the Class 150 Sprinters have had a strange go of things in Train Simulator, and the specific variant I'll be discussing today is a prime example of the questionable business model the devs have been practicing for years. In a lot of cases, you have to pay even more money to get a mod pack that makes the default train actually good, because the original developers were either lazy or incompetent. A Class 150 pack was originally released in 2011, having been made by a consortium of Thomson Interactive and UV Entertainment. Although this was decent for its time, it only included the Class 150-2 and not the prototype 150-0s, which were built as 3-car units, or the production 150-1. Many years later, Dovetail came along and only fixed part of the issue with the missing 150 variants. The 150-1 was finally released in December 2016, and notice how I only said 150-1. This variant differs from the 150-2 by way of the seating layout and a lack of a gangway on the cab end. As far as I know, there aren't any major mechanical differences between the variants. And for context, there are 50 examples of the 150-1 variant, and these units were built in the mid-1980s. Dovetail missed a trick by not including the Network Rail Class 950, a one-off departmental DMU that was directly based on the 150-1. Nor did they include the 3-car 150-0, or, at the very least, a good variety of liveries or headlight variations. Originally, the default pack only included the first Great Western plain blue livery with LED lights, and although DTG eventually added the former Silverlink livery, with London Overground patches, they still didn't add the old BMAC lights. This ex-Silverlink livery would have been for use on the Gospel Oak to Barking line, in order to represent how the service looked before the Class 172 Turbostars came along. This default pack comes with 3 scenarios for the original Bristol to Swansea route, which has since been taken down and replaced by a version that doesn't have any Arriva Trains Wales branding. The 150-1's listing on Steam still hasn't been updated to mention the removal of the original route, nor have the scenarios been updated for compatibility with the unbranded version. There's a trap for young players, if ever I saw one. The default 150-1 is absolute garbage, easily one of the worst trains DTG has ever made for TS Classic. The engine and horn sounds are recycled from the original Class 158 that was released in 2012, and those sounds weren't even accurate to a 158, let alone a 150. And as if that wasn't bad enough, only one horn tone, the one controlled by the spacebar, actually works. To make matters even worse, the unit has the default Kuju era brake release sounds, and I'll wager that Dovetail didn't even bother recording any sounds from a real 150-1. Not helping the situation were the original, and hideously unrealistic, physics, where the unit was so overpowered that it could accelerate as fast as German EMUs like the Talent 2. The physics have since been fixed, but it still doesn't change the garbage sounds, nor does it excuse the awful state this train was first released in. To rub even more salt in the wound, the default 150-1 model has very basic and limited functions, such as the dummy GSMR module, and for whatever reason, you can't even turn on the destination light. The inclusion of only 2 liveries by default severely limits the scenario possibility if you don't want to mess about with freeware reskins or payware enhancement packs. Speaking of which, in June 2017, Armstrong Powerhouse made an enhancement pack for the Class 150-1, which actually makes the unit drivable. The base pack from Steam costs $13 New Zealand at the normal price, ironically cheaper than the enhancement pack, which costs a staggering £15 or $31.34 NZD. How AP could ever think an enhancement pack is worth £15 is beyond me. Despite the unreasonably high price, I still think the 150/1 EP is decent. Like I said, it actually makes the unit drivable. The sounds are identical to AP's overhaul of the ex-Thompson 150/2 model, with said sounds being very good, if I'm honest. I don't know enough about the real 150s to verify the accuracy of the sounds, but as far as I know, they were at least recorded from the real thing. The 150s with AP modifications are some of my favourite British DMUs to drive in the whole game, but it's a pity that we still haven't got a proper 150/0 or the Network Rail Class 950. Besides a much better First Great Western plain blue livery, the Enhancement pack also includes the following liveries: British Rail Provincial, Regional Railways, Centro, Greater Manchester PTE, Sprinter, First North Western, Northern Rail, Central Trains, Network West Midlands, London Midland, Silverlink. And no, I'm not going to do the Call on Me gag, not only because I despise that song, but also because that joke was an MHD thing. I prefer the original Valerie from Steve Winwood, or rather, the 1987 remix. Even more specifically, the extended 7-minute edit of that 1987 remix. Despite my hatred of Call on Me, I still think the gag was funny. As one might expect, the 150/1 Enhancement pack is not perfect, although this was long before AP's quality and reputation really went down the toilet.
Oh, horrible!
You still haven't got a functional GSMR module, or a destination light, and they didn't retexture the interiors for the external model. In other words, you'll still see the same First Great Western colours across all livery variants, apart from when you're in the passenger view, accessible by pressing the 5 key, where they did bother to recolour the seats. Just based on what I'm seeing with this 3x2 seating layout, I dreaded to think how uncomfortable a ride on a real 150/1 must be. Unfortunately, the Enhancement pack doesn't apply to the default FGW and X Silverlink liveries, as this would break existing scenarios that use the default liveries. Speaking of scenarios, this EP includes 3 of them for the Gospel Oak to Barking line, but you can also use the 150/1s on a wide variety of other routes while still being realistic. Examples include Western Main lines from Just Trains, or Exeter to Paignton and Liverpool to Manchester via Warrington Central from Dovetail. Since its original release in 2014, their Riviera Line route has seen a major extension to other areas in Devon and Cornwall, with the extended route being available as a freeware download from ATS. It's called the Railways of Devon and Cornwall version 11. As much as I dislike the present-day Armstrong Powerhouse due to their, shall we say, antics over the last few years, they still deserve some credit where it's due, and I've always liked their 150 packs, despite the limited functions on the 150/1 compared to the 150/2. I can only recommend the Class 150/1 for TS Classic if you get AP's Enhancement packs as well, but certainly not at the full price for either the base or Enhancement packs, especially the latter.